Hi guys, my name is Wilfred and welcome to another episode on Titan Quest. And today I'd like to spend some time theory crafting for you the new class, Rune Master, from the DLC Ragnarok. For those of you who has been following me from the Marvel Heroes days, probably know that I really enjoy analyzing the numbers behind the scene and to sort of like find a build that I'm comfortable with, because a lot of time, we make decisions based on some numbers, but if you do not know what those numbers mean, how then can you trade off from each other? So in this episode, I'm going to walk through with you all the power, all the abilities that Rune Master have, as well as the level and what are the sort of like benefit from each incremental of the level itself. Just a bit of disclaimer, I am pretty new to the whole game Titan Quest, and also my Rune Master is only level 19, but that is sufficient enough for me to put 1 point in everything in the skill tree, as well as having some spare points and another additional 2 spare points to just click onto them and see how the power progresses accordingly. So I'm going to show you some spreadsheets here on how I look into all the numbers, which are the abilities that I probably would like to further invest on, and I may be considering other mastery as well. We'll see how that goes. All right. So now, just to recap a little bit on the Rune Master herself or himself, it does a lot of like rune stuff here. So the first thing first is that the very iconic is called the Runic Mine, which is the one that here, Runic Mines, is whenever enemy comes onto them, these mines, they will kind of explode and get caught, and there's some debuff and stuff like that, so that's kind of cool. And there's something called the Manith Wall, which is the one that you see here, which is to distract the enemy as well as to sort of like, block the projectile coming towards this wall as well. There's something called the Seal of Fate, which is one of the power that I really dislike the most because of how clunky it is to execute it. But if you do it right, you have to click 4 and target somewhere on the ground, and this is the part whereby it will leave it there for a while and then explode. Now, by the way, my setting right now is fast, so the time-wise is a little bit faster than if it was normal. So that is the Seal of Fate. Another one is that it does something called the energy armor as well, I believe called, which is like a bubble to absorb some damage. And last but not the least, of course, a very, very powerful thing is called the Guardian Stone, which is the one that it's a 1 tier up from the Manhir wall, which is the one that you hear. You have all these stones here would sort of like attack the enemies inside, but here it has a really long kind of like cooldown as well, 240 seconds. So use it. It's like an ultimate. Use it when facing boss or some heroic monster, right? And main spender wise is the runic weapon, which is the one here, a rune weapon that would sort of like just buff the main weapon itself. And of course there's another thing called the Thunder Strike as well, which is the multi-target. Use it on the range, it will hit multiple targets at the same time. Use it on the melee, the Rune Master will close the distance to the mob and then hit. Alright, so also there's a whole bunch of passive as well. Now, so looking back and this whole all the abilities here, how then should I invest on pawns moving forward? Then which are the ones that worth reinvesting more than others? So that's the next bit of the video. So now, to do that, what I've done is that I've looked into all the powers out there. The one that grouped together like a whole block here means that you have tier 1 rune weapon. Then you can augment it with another ability called the magical charge. Then after that, you can further augment it with the energy drain as well as transmutation, which is 4 tiers to make the power rune weapon more powerful. So that's what I mean. Some of them is just one ability here, and some of them could be 2. So now, what are the colors mean? The blue means that I read it off from the game itself. So the game will describe the ability in a certain way, so I just copy and type it there. And it's kind of nice as well because I really appreciate the kind of the whole role-playing part of it, because as I do some power, I kind of like imagine I'm like doing inscription or whatever it is, get the rune word out, and I thought it was really fun. Now the green color is the one that I am with certainty, means that I know there are because I've got extra 2 points to add on it, so I've got rank 1 already. At another 2 points is 2 and 3, and then at the third point they will actually tell me what the fourth point would be like. So first 4 levels I'm very confident. The other one, the yellow one, is that I'm kind of confident as well, because I kind of see the pattern I derive using mathematics to fill up the blanks. But of course, the game may surprise me in some way. So I may level up a few, maybe 1, 2 times or 3 times to get 6 more points or 9 more points to just confirm that my mathematics behind is correct. Anything to do with the red color is something that I'm a little bit uncertain, but it is with the pattern I can observe, I can more or less figure out what it would be. Each ability will have a total number of level that is available there to them. So for example, rune weapon, you can level up to 10 times and you can't go beyond. Some of them, like magical charge, you can do it like 16 times. Now, of course, all this will consume consume points, and all in all, you need 200 points to unlock everything, if so you wish to. And also, there I track how many points I put in. So far, I got 1 point everywhere. So that is how thing goes. All right. So I hope that gives you some idea of where things are, how to read this chart, and also I'll just read off some of the comments I make in just a bit. All right. So now, rune weapons Y is the one that will enchant your sort of like your weapon and make it when you hit you got more out from it. Now, interestingly, how it works is that it has a charge level to it. So whenever you hit an enemy, the charge will go up and it will just go higher and higher. So how the progression of the level is that the higher the charges go, the more elemental damage you dish out, the more total damage you dish out, and also the higher the intelligence is that will govern some of this elemental damage output. So on paper, it's kind of like perhaps it's good to go for 10. Just that in a lot of time, I have not quite seen if you're doing trash mob, you don't really get to hit that many times. Usually the mob die like 1 or 2 hits. So if you are facing heroic bosses, there are some instances whereby you could hit quite a fair bit, but there's also a fair bit of kiting as well, which the charges may fall off. I'm not entirely sure. So my advice of this one, to you, is that I'll just keep this in observation. I'll probably invest some point to it and see how the whole thing pan out. Do I really get to the 10 ranks or 10 charges of benefit or not? But all in all, I have no issue over the damage output. All these 25% total damage and 100% intelligence seems really good to me. The second one is that magical charge is kind of interesting as well, because what happened is that as you the power building up as you fight ignite your rune weapons with elemental magic and strike out anybody who touches you. So if you are like at melee range, you get a lot of, because my Rune Master is more like a melee kind of like a character. So elemental retaliation is kind of nice, like a thorn kind of thing. Elemental damage is also not bad. I mean, it charges it add DPS, flat out DPS to your weapon itself. Just to give you a point of reference, I think my weapon unaltered by any other kind of like just looking at weapon damage itself, I'm looking at 6 to 12 at my level right now. So add another 6 to it flat, it doesn't seem like a bad deal. So it may scale up quite nicely as well. I'll have to see, but the number of points required to get there seems to rather a lot as well, and as well as there's energy cost to it. So maybe towards the end game, have to look after the energy regeneration, which right now I don't really need to care, because everything is rank 1 anyway. So the next one is energy drain. Energy drain is kind of interesting because I do come across magical monsters that are quite nasty, because they hit rather hard with with all the fire or frost, whatever it is. So being able to leech the energy is kind of nice, because it recover the one that I'm required to fill my kind of damage output, and also 4% flat to have your attack damage converted to health. I think it's just essential. I mean, this one has got to be a 1 point. You must invest 1 point in it, because with this 4%, it's going to heal you for quite a fair bit, depending on damage that you dish out. Reduce offensive ability for 3 seconds. It's also nice. I'll talk a little bit about the offensive, defensive in just a bit, but it governs the fact that when A hits B, how much are you going to hit or miss? Are you going to crit or not? Depending on the difference between the offensive and defensive ability. So reduce their offensive ability will give you higher chance to hit, as well as maybe perhaps crit as well. Slow for 3 seconds. How many percent is slow is also good. So these are, I think this is quite a nice power to look into heavily investing on. I would say, especially perhaps during a more difficult situation. Transmutation is also quite interesting because very unique to the Rune Master, I think, that you could actually convert your weapon damage into elemental. And then the elemental damage would then be buffed by other things like elemental damage here. So it's synergized. Like imagine you have 25% buff on your elemental damage, whereby 63% is being converted from your weapon damage into that, so and then being affected by intelligence as well. So it synergizes pretty well, and besides, there's only one main spender for Rune Master, which is the rune weapon itself. So that's in a sense what this whole power is, on how much you want to progress in it. So I would say, the first tier, I'll experiment and see how many charges I realistically can attain, but the rest of it seems pretty good to have to go deep into. Rune Feather is to increase your offensive ability, or also decrease your strength requirement for all weapons. Now this is rather interesting because I realized that for Rune Master, the mastery increase all the 3 attributes. It's almost like a Scion in Path of Exile. You have to they increases intelligence, strength, as well as dexterity. But it seems to me that in the mastery point of view, they buff the intelligence more than the other 2 attributes. So all in all, if I could have 44% decrease in strength requirement, I could actually use quite a lot of very strong armor for my Rune Master if I want to do a little bit of melee. So I think this is rather interesting. Another thing that increase the offensive ability is not a percentage, but add on to it also could be quite interesting. Now, but what is the impact to that formula that I mentioned about the difference between offensive ability versus the defensive ability of the target? And then after that, you calculate whether you can hit or miss, crit or not crit. I'm not entirely sure whether this number is really significant or not, but I'll do a little bit more on theory crafting. But all in all, the 44% strength requirement reduction seems a rather good deal, to be honest. Just because I don't really get a lot of strength per se as a Rune Master. It's more like you have to balance between strength, strength as well as intelligence, maybe dexterity if you like to play a little bit of ranged. Okay, the Rune of Life is a buff by itself. So you by the way, the one before this is passive. This is a buff, self buff. I believe this is the only buff that you have in terms of that lasts for a long time, besides the energy armor. Rune of Life buff a couple of things. It gives you 10-minute worth of buff that increases your strength and increases your movement speed by 10%, and also resistant to bleeding and vitality damage. Now the bleeding, as I come to understood, is that it is like a damage over time, but more of like a bleeding kind of like damage over time. Some weapon may bleed you. Vitality damage is actually quite interesting because some actually reduce your vitality by a certain percentage. So for example, they'll reduce your vitality by 25%. If you're at 1,000, it'll take away 250. If you're at 500, then take away 125. So and you have to resist that. With the resistor, you can resist that. I suspect these are more the higher end kind of like damage that is coming in. When you face with mobs that has bleeding or vitality damage, it's probably quite nasty. And to actually counter that is basically either gear for it or you can do a passive. buff to it. Sounds like a good deal because you can, I realize that in this game things can get a little bit tricky when the damage cannot be mitigated or resisted. So I would still feel that this is something that I could look into. 10% strength, probably not something I would shout about because if you are having like, I don't know, at my level, right now I have like 100 odd, then another 5% of it is not really giving me a lot of strength coming out from that. But I think it's more from a resistance point of view, is how much more you need, depending on how much gear you have, I think. But that is something that is for noting. It is an important buff. Whether I go deep into it or not, it probably depends on the gear augmentation that you have. Right. Sacred Rage is yet another passive, but this passive will trigger when your health drop below 40%. So how it works is that when it drops below 40%, you gain a buff called Sacred Rage. And the buff will stay with you so long as your health is below 40%. Once your health recovers to above 40%, the buff is lost. Right? So that kind of just makes sense. During the buff, when the buff is active, you actually absorb 20% of the incoming damage, which is not bad itself. And also you recover energy because you probably require energy to do things, and the higher rank it is, the more energy you recover per second. And also you increase the speed, total speed. I think there's a speed of it doesn't really say, to be honest, but it could well be. I don't know whether it's attack speed or not. I have to really look into a little bit more than that. But the higher it goes, seems to be a more like kind of like frenzy kind of thing. So I thought it could well be attack speed itself. But interestingly also is a minus in the recharge. So recharge in this game is a cooldown. So I believe it is like a cooldown reduction of like 10% when it's rank 1 up to 46%. So whenever you drop to 40%, you drop the recharge percentage to 46%. That could be quite substantial at the higher end. But that is provided that your health drop below 40%. May or may not happen. I think during boss fight that could happen quite a fair bit, at least for me at my level so far. And I found that the cooldown reduction could be quite a game changer because there are quite a number of power that require cooldown, and especially one of them, the Guardian Stones that you'll see later. It lead me to believe that whenever your health drop below 40, it kind of trigger this kind of recharge reduction, and it go back up. Then after that, it go down 40. Below 40%, it trigger another time. So it could be quite interesting, the kind of gameplay. And another thing good for rank 1, I mean, I think this is no-brainer for 1 point because, you have a soul resistance as well, which could be quite hurtful in some of the scenario. You can augment the Sacred Rage with the Frightening Power. Now, this one is kind of interesting to fear the lesser monsters. So it doesn't fear the boss, but it fear the lesser enemies. Now, what I have not kind of figured out so far is that would this kind of thing like reduction to enemies' health, which can only be reduced by the vitality resistance, I believe, would that apply to bosses as well? If so, that could be quite interesting. And you reduce the damage for 3 seconds of the incoming damage from the mobs as well, and you have a chance to fear them and chance to go up as well. So it could well be quite interesting to invest points to it because reduction to enemies' health is a good thing to have. And by the way, when I say a theme there, it means that it's a diminishing return. So I worked out that there's a diminishing return, and I projected extrapolate to level 6 to see how it goes. Same as for this one as well, there's a diminishing return there. Pad is just a pattern, so I see that 5, 6, 6, 7, I believe 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10 kind of thing, so it's just a pattern that I recognize. Okay, next one is called Thunder Strike. Thunder Strike is the one that you hit multiple target, either you multi-shot or you kind of like charge into an enemy and hit a couple of times enemy at the same time. It has a 7-second recharge or cooldown. Energy cost will go up as the level comes up. Art of attack is 20 250, so I think it's 250 degree of the arc of attack. So it attack everything like more than just in front cone. Is almost like, it's not 360, probably not the one behind you, but it's quite a wide distance. It may pierce through the enemies as well, 50%, and you launch 5 of them. So you can 5 projectile, you charge onto the enemy, 5 of them will get hit, potentially a little bit more if they manage to shoot past it. So now, here comes a question that I'm still trying to resolve, is that it gives me a 2 to 20 lightning damage. At rank 1, which I'll get if I unlock it, it's actually not bad. Rank 1, because a weapon, like I say, is about 6 to 12 kind of thing for my dagger. That's fast dagger. But of course, you have to come to realization it's a 7-second cooldown, so it is really minute, minuscule in a sense. But interestingly, rank 2 and above, or level 2 and above, give you a total damage of 7%, 14%, so on and so forth. So that leads me to believe or speculate that the Thunder Strike, the 2 to 20 lightning damage is just one of the kind of like flavor to it. It could well be the weapon damage that you have against the target. That would be quite nice. Or they try to have this increase this lightning damage by this amount, which kind of it doesn't quite make sense, because I see later some of the ability they actually augment the min and the max accordingly to rank increase, level increase. So I believe it's more like the total damage that you deal to the Thunder Strike with your weapon. So that's how I usually figure things out. Min and max of stun, again, is a pattern, so you can stun for a certain amount of time, and whenever the target is being stunned, of course, it's kind of nice as well, because that kind of like a little bit crowd control. So higher rank will give you a little bit more stun, kind of like duration, interruption, stuff like that. 100% movement speed. So I think all in all, I think 10 points is 10 level is something. I mean, 1 level is something that you should definitely have, just because of the you can charge up and close the distance. But whether to increase the level or not, depending on the interpretation of this total damage itself. So this one is vital. That would be the governing kind of like, do you want to put more ranks to it to deal total damage? So yeah, so that is one. Another one is that the electrical burn damage per second is also another one that's a little bit fuzzy here. Probably need to do a little bit of testing as well. A niche will burn electrical burn per second. So 32 per second is quite a fair bit. But the question is that how long would it last? It's not something that from the tooltip I can decipher. So a couple of imagination here and there. It could well be that you burn it for 7 seconds, right? So every time when you can recharge, I mean when the cooldown is off, then you do it again, and that would be quite a significant, because the two. I mean, right now my character, forget about those secondary stats, just the pure offensive stat, is doing about 90 DPS for level 19. So 32 is actually not too bad as a burn per second. The question is how many seconds. Now, if they actually last for the duration of the whole entire 7-second recharge, kind of like ray, it's rather nice to max it all the way up. And also there's a chance to confuse, may or may not be good anyway, but it's yet another crowd control. When you face multiple kind of like mobs, it could well be quite attractive to invest some point into it. How many of it depends on how you interpret this one here. Runic Mine. Runic Mine is the one that you lay the mine in and the enemy comes over you and they get exploded. It has a radius of 1 to 2, kind of like you can't know how far it is and explode for how long. This is the one that has a min and max range. So like I said, if you look at 2 to 20, they could well be something that augment it with a range like level 1 2 to 20, level 2 is 4 to 40. I don't know, I'm just making it up, but they didn't do that, so that led me to believe that this is really about the total damage of the weapon that you wield. Alright, so now back to Runic Mine. It gives you the elemental damage of this much, and then over time. The DPS, if you just look at the rank one, is not that fantastic. It's 2.4, and you can compare it with the rest of the power abilities later. 2.4 is not that fantastic. However, I think the beauty of the Runic mines lies in the fact that there could be multiple mobs that comes in and they get exploded. But it is less likely to be a boss killer in a sense, because I think one way is to actually kite the boss around with the Runic mine and just keep triggering the kind of like explosion. That's one way to see it. But another way to see it is that when you do a Runic mine, you see that you lay out a couple of them. If you can kite the enemy around those mines, like I think there are like 4 of them or 6 of them, whatnot, then your DPS actually multiply, because within the 9-second cooldown or recharge rate, you can actually explode it to 2.4 times for 6 times, I can't remember. So it's something that is quite interesting. That's what I do as well. Sometimes for tougher enemy, I lay down the mines, I then walk them through the mine, and then they get exploded. But those are only effective towards melee ones. The range one won't work at all. So Runic mine would not be very effective towards those range one. However, the good thing about the Runic mine is that it has a freezing mine augmentation on top, because it has a frost burn damage over 3 seconds, and that is also pretty nice as well. So something to think about. So that is the something that I could actually work with to see whether I want to have the burn that is consistent through time. I think if you worked it out, because over 3 seconds, but it's a 9-second cooldown, so you are talking about probably a 12 DPS. Rank 1 DPS is 12, so it's actually not bad for frost burn. This one is worth investing more points to it, more level to it. I've seen it freeze before. Doesn't matter how many levels, it's still 25% and it's slow. So yet another something that I would kind of recommend myself to invest a bit more on the freezing mine. But as for this guy here, I'm not quite entirely sure. It could well be useful, but the use is very limited to the melee kind of like monsters, as well as the one that you can drag it across to explode it 9 times or 6 times or 4 times, whatever it is. Okay, Rune Word Explode is one of the passive, but it's a chance proc, it's a proc kind of thing. So it has a percentage of 4% to, I presume from my calculation, is 18%. I think at a low percentage is not that useful. Now, it explode 120 degrees, not 180. So it's like a front cone. It's not like, not like 240, the one that you've seen before, but it's more like 120, kind of like a front cone. The radius is 2.5, so it's rather far-reaching. The damage itself is rather low though, by the way. It doesn't really add up to a big number. Like if you compare some of these numbers versus this kind of numbers, it doesn't seem to add up that well. Well, although, if you add the two things together, it's 88. 88 is still kind of like, it's lower than this one. But I think what you are investing is a chance that proc the next one, which is the burn. The Rune Word Burn is the one that will have a damage over time burn to it. But yet again, if you look at 4%, it's really minuscule. That's not even worth to put them. I don't know whether it's worth to put the 1 point in it even, but I did put it in there just for testing. But I think this one will probably pays off if you want to invest a little bit more heavy. 18% chance to be used. It could well be all right, but my apologies. We shouldn't compare 88 with any of this, because this is a surefire. But then again, it's a 9-second cooldown kind of thing. So, take it as you like. But it's kind of like this one is a little bit questionable. I would think pretty hard before putting all the points into this guy here. But that's just my thought. Now, Menhir Wall is interesting together with Guardian Stone. So I need to spend some time talking about this guy here. Menhir Wall is the one that laid the wall in front, and it has a recharge rate of 22 seconds. It blocked the projectile as well as distracting the enemies to it, and they attack it. So it costs energy, of course, quite a fair bit, 75 energy, but it's a flat kind of like cost to it. Increasing the rank will increase the health of the wall itself. Now, I presume if you want to use the wall for something useful, you probably would need to invest the level, because as the content getting higher, I presume they'll hit harder, and when they hit harder, your wall will not be able to stay on for too long. So that is one thing to think about. You probably need to level this guy up as you face tougher enemies, because the effectiveness of the wall will kind of diminish as you remain as a rank 1. and yeah, I mean, it has the ability to retaliate and it's stunned. So anybody who's stunned the wall will get stunned instead. Kind of makes sense in some sense. Now, the more interesting thing is the Guardian Stones, which I see like an ultimate of Marvel heroes. It has an incredibly long cooldown, 240. I don't know whether I can reduce this one using the Sacred Rage earlier on, the cooldown reduction of I think 40% that would be nice. So this is like almost like a 4 minute 4 minute cooldown, which is very long. It costs quite a fair bit of energy to build one as well. But the good thing about it is that as such, so it's on its own, it's rather durable. Each stone itself has a health of 1,000 versus the wall itself is 150, and it's scaled up to 2,100. It has two abilities. One ability is that every 4 seconds it will fire the target, called elemental lightning. It will lightning the target, and it'll deal the elemental damage of 200. Now, if you look at just one stone itself, it's a rank 1 DPS is already 550. But if you look at 3 stones, then it hits pretty good. So usually for the boss, I would like to pop that thing up. Probably after all the debuff sets in, I'll pop this one up to as a boss killer. So it is definitely something I would consider kind of like leveling up as well. But I will have to use it a little bit more on the Guardian Stone. Another thing is that when it is being destroyed, and sometimes bosses like to destroy the stone, I've seen it done before, and when that happens, each of the stone will blast out the damage, which is 40%, but it also reduces the enemy health by 33%. So it's rather neat. If there are 3 stones, then can you imagine if it's self-destruct without the it's 4 radius of 4 is quite large. So long as the boss or enemies around the stone 4 tiles or whatever away from it, you will get the reduction there. So something to think about. And the stone will last for 45 seconds, but from my experience, sometimes it will be destroyed before that, especially for some kind of boss fight. But even when it's destroyed, it's there. So I would definitely recommend. Like I would personally put up all these things here, especially for Rune Master, which is melee, and the stone is very nice because it's just around you. It's a melee kind of thingy, right? Seal of Faith, one of the power that I really don't enjoy doing, because unlike say Marvel Heroes or Diablo 3, when you click the button, it fire off. Then it kind of like casts it on the area. But for Seal of Fate to work, I have to click the button, which is, I don't know, I can't remember 4, and I have to click somewhere on the screen that there's no mob in it. Because if there was a mob in it, my left button, which is the attack, will then take into action instead. So I have to constantly look for some space on the map that do not have any mobs standing on it, and then cast a Seal of Fate there. And that's basically the challenge I'm finding to use this one. But it seems to me that as a Rune Master, I really have no choice but to master how to use this one. Now, why? It has a rather large radius of 4 kind of tiles, so it's good for you to know what 4 means, because your Guardian Stone also have a destruction of 4. This one here, 4 and 4. So now, the Seal of Faith does 100 elemental damage, and it's quite nice because 100 is kind of quite a large one. It's 11.1 for something that you can spam every 9 seconds. I mean, that is really a good DPS there. But another thing good about it is the reduction of enemy health as well, because starting with 20% up to 42%. So it is something that you like to cast it there and see explode. The only thing that is not quite nice about this one is that it takes 3 seconds for it to detonate. And even with the faster gameplay, it takes maybe 2 seconds to detonate. So during the time when you manage to successfully cast on the floor that you can cast it on, and when it explodes, it takes a while. Sometimes you may miss, but when it does go off, it's stunned, and when the enemy is stunned for 2 seconds, it will then, of course they have stun resistance, but if you stun for 2 seconds successfully, then at least you mitigate some of the damage coming onto you. And another good thing about it is the damage to devices, because I realized that there are some traps, like fire trap, more like Path of Exile. I think they use some of this old school kind of mechanism. You can see the Diablo 3 as well, the fire trap or thing that shoot. I believe those are called devices. Some of the monster also will summon devices as well. it is very effective. It double against the devices. So this is definitely something that I would need to rank up, but it's a power that I really dislike using. Aftershock is even more fantastic. Aftershock is the one that gives a bleeding damage for 4 seconds, and it is a pretty high DPS, as you can see. It's a 4 second over the 9 second cooldown. It also reduced armor 140, reduced resistance 14, all resistances. So it's reduced resistances for over 4 seconds. Every resistance reduced by 14. And also, those that would need to aim and shoot you like from afar, those would 60% chance of impaired aim, so they would miss, I believe. And you can interrupt the skill, for 4 seconds. So whatever the skill, like magical one that go against you, because magical monster usually will stay quite stationary, so you can just do it, and you can slow as well if it's a melee. So it's a really, really good power to it. I just have to learn how to use this one well. All right, Reckless Offense is the one that I believe this is more like a two-hand kind of like a build. If you so wish to drop your shield and use another weapon instead, so you can dual wield. And a good thing about this configuration is that it has a chance to double the damage of the dual wield. The only thing is that if you don't invest point in it, then it's kind of pointless, because 4% 1 point in it is not going to fly. You're not going to have a double that much. But 20% for double, so net is probably 20% increase to your damage. That's how I see it. All in all, I don't think I'm going to be a dual wield kind of like Rune Master, but just in case any one of you would like to do a dual wield. The one that I prefer is the Rune Absorb, which is the shield. Now, how shield work in this game is that there's a recovery time, I believe. I think each time you block an attack, you can only block the next attack in maybe 2.5 seconds to 3 seconds time. So being able to reduce the shield recovery time would be a big plus for you to keep blocking. Having said that, I believe there's a hard cap of 90%. It depends on how many percent you've got from your gear, and then you augment with this power. Another thing is you absorb the spell energy. Now this is kind of interesting. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I can kind of like imagine how it works is that if someone you use a certain amount of energy to cast a spell that falls into you, and you take the hit, but what you can get out from it is that you can actually use the energy of the spell that is being cast onto you as your own energy. So it's kind of interesting. It helps the whole refunding of the energy. So you can just keep getting hit by all the spell, and you can get all the energy back up to deal more damage kind of thing. Another thing is that energy leech retaliation. So if you have been playing Titan Quest, you probably have met some really annoying monster that leech all your energy, and you can't do anything, because without energy, all the abilities just can't be used. You can actually retaliate as well. So there's more like a reduction on the energy leech, I think. That depends on how much energy the other person has, of course. But if they leech onto you, you leech onto them. If everybody becomes zero, then you leech nothing out from them. So something to think about. I think it's more to increase the sheer recovery time is probably something that I'll be looking for, but it has a diminishing return as well, so just to bear in mind, it's not that the more level it is, the more equally powerful this Rune Absorb is, it's just lesser. Okay, last one is energy armor. Now energy armor is an interesting mechanism. It has a pretty high energy cost that will escalate up, meaning that the higher the level, the more energy that you may need. I need to verify this part. So as I say, red is the one that I figure it out through logic, but I have to validate it as well. But the good thing about it is that it buffs you and your ally, but I don't really have any ally. I play it by myself. But it absorbs a certain amount of damage upon you, and I've realized that the shield actually hold up for quite a fair bit, but it only absorb things like physical bleeding or pierce. So anything to do with physical damage, you can absorb it. It doesn't absorb things like spell or fire or poison or whatnot, but it's kind of nice to have the kind of protection. But more so, it's a stun resistance of 50% because there aren't really a lot of things that you have to gear for it. Being stunned and not being able to get out from it is like a sitting duck with all the things pointing towards you. So I would say at least get a rank 1. But whether to invest more on it or not, depending on how much you can sustain the energy cost to it. So, so that with that said, that is really all. And I thank you so much for watching. And as you can see, I'm really kind of like passionate towards this game. And I'd like to just do a little bit more kind of like, being able to, understand a little bit more on how to play better on the Rune Master, and in time to come I may augment it with other mastery, but right now I just would like to do as good I can with one class. I suspect I think there's quite a lot of levels to gain in this game with the new DLC as well. So each level, I got like 3 points. So I think eventually I should have enough to unlock everything. But whether I would like to unlock everything or not is really a question, because there are other mastery, there are other there are other things that I could augment with my build. But in order to get there, I have to understand what my build can potentially give me and where are all the weaknesses, and I should pick a class or mastery that complement my build in a sense. But that is more in the future to come. So again, thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you more on this game. It's a very good game. Bye.